we've had a great trot through a range of innovative technologies and a range of sectors within farming. We've addressed sustainability in the broadest context, not just environmental sustainability, but also the economic and social aspects of that. We've been looking at productivity increases, how to create a circular economy, how some of these technologies can have a really major effect on our ability to reduce emissions quickly, if we think about methane emissions from slurry lagoons, and how we need to get the science right on some of these things as well. But before I open up to the floor, I just want to address something that we've touched on a little bit, but we've not quite taken it full on. As you might expect, this is a future of technology event. So we've got people who are doing really highly innovative things that have great potential to be radical disruptors to markets that they're working in, which is what you would really like to see to take us to where we need to go. But what we haven't really addressed in any great detail is what are the principal barriers that you've experienced as innovators, as entrepreneurs, in getting your technologies from an idea through to the marketplace. And I'm interested to know whether these are barriers around farmer reluctance to adopt. We touched on that a little bit. Have you experienced that within your work? Or is this really about policy and legislation? Or is it more about funding and finance and being able to get access to that? Chris, let's start with you. What are the kind of the key barriers you've addressed in moving Bannerman forward?
Part of the reason I gave this talk was because no one believed there was methane coming off slurry lagoons. And so policy in the UK had been designed around enteric, almost purely. So that was the first thing. I think that's going to get put to bed and has been, to a large extent. And then secondly, certainly farmer engagement, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Huge, if we had products ready to go now, and I'm sure the same is true for Alistair, if all the infrastructure was on farm for methane tractors and slurry covers, we would be selling by the hundreds now. Our biggest problem has been scale up. So scale up in terms of 1.2 million dairy farms in the world. How do you get to go from the diesel ecosystem to the methane ecosystem at a rate that we need to do it? And I think so that's been designing everything we can to be as dumb as possible, to be as quick to make and as cheap to make for the farmer to get them. That's been a real problem, scale up. And I think it's great to see new technologies, but until something like this comes along, no one thinks about how you're going to transition from diesel, where it could be something to do with big tractors to small tractors. Mm-hmm. It's that transition in the number of years that we really want to do it in. It's just a real challenge.
And there's two issues there I'd just like to unpack a little bit more. So with the farmer adoption, presumably quite a lot of that has been associated with the understanding the economic model, the business model, and that it comes to what Mercedes and V were talking about, return on investment.
Yeah. So interestingly, when you do a slurry cover, for a lot of this is dilapidated equipment. Putting a cover on a dilapidated lagoon actually doubles the amount of gives you nearly double the amount of storage just by keeping the rainwater out. That means the farmer is only moving, 2/3 the amount of slurry that they'd have to do. He gets his 6 months storage. But more importantly, he actually said we're seeing from our first two farms savings of 55% and 60% of the artificial fertilizer. Now that's taken 2 years to get that data. Mm-hmm. It's taken another 2 years to get the data for the first farm where we know how much methane we're capturing, and now we're starting to go into how much methane they're using in terms of the actual fuel. So, getting that sort of buy-in isn't something you get overnight. Mm-hmm. You can go out with some nice brochures, but actually it's only when you get farmers get their hands on the equipment, they operate it. We have lots of problems. So again, not only have we got to transition with thousands of deployments, we've also got to go through that, through that period of understanding. Mm-hmm. More education about that, the better. Fantastic, really. And the more farmers that see these benefits.
So getting the science right and raising awareness and getting buy-in from policymakers. And in terms of that second issue that I want to unpack, scale up, major issue often for small, innovative, entrepreneurial, startup type companies. Many of them never cross that valley of death from being that small innovator through to being fully scaled up. A lot of that's to do with funding and finance. And I guess, Alistair, that's where CNH have come in with Benjamin in being able to provide a secure pathway towards scale up of their technology. Would you like to address that a little bit, and then also the barriers that you've encountered on that journey?
Yeah, well, I'll answer it the other way around. I'll do the barriers first, because the barriers for us as a machinery manufacturer, obviously, making machines is something we do, and it's something that we know how to do quite simply. So one of the challenges we've had all the way through with alternative fuels is actually the fuel supply to the customer. We can invent whatever machine we want that runs on whatever fuel, but the customer will look at us, so that's great, but how do I get it? And with all the alternative fuels that we've looked at, battery is great, but a lot of farms don't have a good electricity supply, so they look at us with a big battery and say, that's great, but I haven't got enough power to charge my phone. What am I supposed to do with that thing? So all the way through, we've had this problem. We built the tractor. We built a methane tractor a long time before we met Chris, and we were probably a little bit naive at that point. We thought, okay, we've done that. We've done the research in Europe. Says there's 18,000 biodigesters in Europe, so there's lots of gas around. We can use that. But when you actually drill down, only about 2,000 of those were actually cleaning the gas from biogas into pure gas, and then nobody was compressing it. So there was nobody to actually fill it. So we thought, we'll go for fossil gas, we'll try that. But again, while a lot of farms, the gas pipe runs across the land, I was saying, well, that's great, but the gas supply company want £1,000 per metre to bring the gas from the pipe to our farm, so you don't have to go many metres before your gas becomes really expensive. So that was a problem, and within the activity that we did with the gas tractor, one of the things was looking for a solution as how we're going to feed this tractor, and it's where we ran into so Chris, the whole system seemed to give us this circular economy. Back in 2009 when we did the hydrogen tractor, CNH had this, we presented a vision of the circular farm, but to be honest, it was a vision. We didn't quite know how we were going to execute it, and running into Chris was kind of, hey, this is the way to execute it, and we believe we've got the big corporate might to be able to support Chris in industrialising his equipment and rolling it out.
Well, that is supply chain as well. Without CNHI on board, how do you service a piece of kit in America? Mm-hmm. How do you break into Brazil? How do you go into Italy? So the fact that there's these New Holland and Case dealerships all around the world, and they're all technical people who can, provided we can provide the training, is something that you really can do this copy and paste model. You can do it. It's going to be different in every country because there's different regulations and different requirements. But it's actually the dealership, the network that's behind New Holland, which has been built up over hundreds of years. 100 years at least, so that is, again, anyone who wants to scale up, if you haven't got someone in the field to fix it when it goes wrong, who can get there within an hour, a farmer can't wait 2 weeks for something to be fixed, so that is an absolute requirement. And
one of the challenges for any size company, but certainly small companies, is when you're providing fuel, it's an essential item to the farm, in that you've got to be there 24 hours a day, because if the fuel supply stops when the customer's trying to do something, the whole thing stops, and that's a sort of security that the customer wants. He says, okay, I don't care when it's working. When it's working, it's fine. What happens when it goes wrong?
Yeah, and so it's a mission critical piece there. Yep. I'd just like to open up really to V and Mercedes. I mean, as Beehive, as startups, as innovative developers, entrepreneurs, do you recognize some of these issues, the scale up issue and the getting the science right and raising awareness issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I would start with saying there's a lot of push-off technologies is what we find in our landscape. Push-off technologies. So either we got a drone, so we're selling drone, or we're selling drone technology, or we got satellite, we're selling satellite technology. But there isn't enough pull. So the trend has to change from us pushing technologies to actually the industry pulling a solution that you're technology agnostic, so you create and cross-pollinate from different industries and sectors to create a solution to solve a particular problem. Then the pretty picture, no value proposition dies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the biggest barrier. The second one is there's quite a lot of public funding and UKRI and Innovate UK fundings that's gone into developing these kind of technologies in agri-tech, and they have been really good in the past 6-7 years. Where there is more funding required is to de-risk the farmers in adapting those technologies in the early stages. And that's what I would push the government to do more. And I think with the combination of those, if the farmer can see that it's less risk for them, but also they can see that it is a pull from the industry, and more you make implements rather than rovers and semi-autonomous vehicles that go around the farm, it becomes easier for farmers to adapt because they can relate to it and they can see the value proposition and they can de-risk with the funding that the government can provide them. And that's how we go about it.
And I mean, I recognize that totally. I've worked with farmers all over the world, all over the world, many different countries. And there's nothing like for a farmer seeing it, their neighbor using it in the field, or seeing somebody they trust within the community or within the local area, a farmer using it and advocating, within the farming group for its use and making good money out of it. If they manage to buy a better car that year, then this is worth investing in. Mercedes, have you, are you recognizing some of these things? What barriers are you finding?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me as well is the iterative nature of the science, and that maybe you don't get it right or perfectly right the first time. And then the growers need to understand that that doesn't mean that it's not ever gonna work. It's just step one, right? Kate, when you were showing the first initial results of the harvester, right? It wasn't even going straight, or it was having problems. But you're saying there's the potential there, and it's bringing the growers into understanding the potential and what is needed to, make it a fully commercial solution, I would say.
Yeah. So, Kate, I mean. What are your thoughts on this? You come at this from an academic perspective, but also as a farmer's son, and also as a technology developer in previous lives.
Yeah. So for me, our project was all about showing that the technology was there, with enough of the right people thinking about it and working on it, with a bit of money behind them. We could farm autonomously. We could use vision systems. We could change our fuel source. We could have done that, 5 years ago. That was the point in hands-free. It was to actually open the eyes of farmers who weren't seeing that. And I think the transition in the last 5 years, through my project and others that have been very loud, is that farmers are now, eyes are open. They're open to methane. They're open to automation. They're open to AI-embedded systems because of largely some government funded through Innovate UK that made all that happen, okay, I have to say. So we were all about saying it could happen. Once we've shown it can happen, it's really about making a landscape that's sort of, or not a landscape, making a sort of enabling and making it easy for that adoption, okay? So again, in the last few years, I've spent a lot of time working with people like insurers. So NFU Mutual insure a vast majority of the farms in the UK. So we've worked with them to try and help them understand, because when a farmer goes, yeah, it's great, I can have an autonomous, who's going to insure that? What's the legislation for it? And frankly, the legislation is a bit of a grey area. There's nothing to say you can farm with a robot, there's nothing to say you can't. So nothing to say you can use a laser weeder or a spot sprayer, there's nothing to say you can't. So it's all a bit grey. So that's what farmers say when they see it at events. As you say, once they see it in a farm next door, that kind of goes out the window a little bit and they just want it. But it's who's going to insure it? Am I allowed to do it? So, like I say, we've worked to develop, there's a British standard now for the use of autonomous systems on farms. We work with insurers. We've had HSE come and look at this stuff and try and, get all the right people lined up to essentially make it an environment where it's sort of welcoming to adopt this technology as it comes through. And that's really important. Looking over the hedge, I joked about it earlier, but it is important, seeing your neighbour. So I showed the farm droid. There's about 20 of them in the UK. They are fully autonomous. They're growing vegetables. If you ate a lettuce last year, it might have come from a farm droid growing it. But in Shropshire, where Harper is, one farm got one, and then the neighbouring farm got one, and then the neighbouring farm got one, and then one of the other ones got a second. So I think there's now 5 within a few miles of each other because of that looking over the hedge and seeing is believing thing. And I think, and the reason they even looked then is because they'd seen our stuff at Harper the year before and started looking on the market.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, that's been your experience with Kevin and Katie Hoare, hasn't it? And that was a breakthrough in terms of getting awareness for your technology.
Yeah, and understanding new technologies as they grow. So just as an example, quick one, Trinary Farm, they use a lot of contractors to spread the slurry. So they would normally spend 2 days on a contractor to get his fields spread from slurry. The contractor turned up at 6 o'clock in the morning, connected it up to our system, filled up his tanker in half the time that it would normally take, because it's now a nice runny digestate that's been in there for 6 months. He left the farm by lunchtime that day. So 2 days worth of slurry spreading using the latest slurry technology. We didn't see that coming, right? So they think this year they're going to save £18,000 on contractors' fees for spreading slurry. And then they're starting to see some of they actually rotate the arable, they rotate the pasture into arable once every 3 years, I think. And this is the first year they've done it off a field that had digestate last year. And the worm count in that field, according to arable farmer, has gone through the roof compared to artificial fertilizer. There is a whole science starting to emerge behind all of this. I'm a physicist, unfortunately. Sorry, mate. I did love O-level biology, but unfortunately gave up for chemistry. I wish I hadn't. But there's a whole raft of new biology that's going to come out of this because, with the sort of technology and the understanding of soil, that sequestration, we're taking the CO2 out of the biogas, but then the soil is absorbing. Part of the reason Kevin and Katie went will go minus 60 tons next year is because they're getting over 60 tons of sequestration. Yeah. And that's all biology, that's technique, that's technology, that's measurements.
And it's all benefits beyond having
the methane.
Yeah. I think that's it with all these. It's got to create value for the customer, because when we first started playing around with stuff, case of why do I want this tractor? Because it's sustainable. Yeah, but
to buy that shiny new car. Right, I'm going to move on to the audience now. So plenty of hands flying up. Lovely. Okay, we've got some roving mics. Give your name and affiliation. Make it fairly quick if you can and concise. I don't mind a question. I don't mind a point of discussion. Just whatever you like. The gentleman in the blue jumper there, I think, was first with his hand up.
Well, thanks for that. So my name is Ilan Adler. The company is Economad Solutions. We do small-scale biogas reactors. So question for Chris Bemmerman. Do you heat your units or add any stirring or mixing? And what we saw on the screen, roughly what volume is it? Very short questions.
There's a little video in the presentation I made. I don't know whether we might be able to put up at the end. So it's basically most of the lagoons we work on are earth banks. There's no heating at all. Okay, so it's just running around once you go down a meter, it's about 16 degrees C. So it's a very low temperature, very stable. It's a lagoon that we put a cover on. And unfortunately, the video wasn't in my presentation. Otherwise, you'll see the gas build up within hours. We put a lagoon cover on, and within 30 hours, it had captured 80 kilograms of methane. No heating. What we're seeing is, slurry is inherently anaerobic. There's no stirring other than introducing fresh slurry and taking out old. But it becomes very watery. It's in the 6 months retention period, so it's very watery by the time it's nearly.
Sorry,
storage.
What volume
Trinary is 150 cows, and that's 3,500 cubic meters of storage. So it's pretty big.
Okay, next question. I think, Leon, you had your hand up, did you?
Leon DeMarco, I'm a technology consultant. Chris has slightly answered my question. Negative emissions is a very misused term, and I can see you start off with removing carbon dioxide to the air to stick it in the biomass. I'm still stuck, although you've partially said you're getting carbon into the soil, about whether you really got negative emissions.
What we didn't see was that you've got, let's use simple numbers, 1 unit of enteric, 3 units of slurry and manure methane. What we haven't seen was if you take that and now use it as a fuel, you're offsetting on Trinidad's 15,000 litres of diesel, times that by 3 is 44 tonnes. We're offsetting 20,000 kilowatt hours of electricity using a methane generator. You get another 20 tonnes. So you're actually, compared to the farm running as it is today, and under this, it actually goes negative.
That's mitigation. It's not negative emissions.
there's still methane coming off cows, but unless you want to starve everybody, and so you're going to have that.
That's, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to do because 20 gigatons of CO2e is a shocker, absolute shocker. So, but it's mitigation.
I'm not so sure it is, because maybe we can continue the discussion over lunch.
We might come back to that in a minute.
Yeah, maybe back to it.
Okay, so who could have believed that cow poo could be so interesting? You, sir.
Thank you, Simon Barnes from University of Kent. It's a question for all of the panel, really. What role do they think synthetic biology will be playing in all of this on the farm of the future in 10 or 15 years' time? And are they concerned about synthetic biology, or do they see that as an opportunity? So that's really the modification at cell level to make some of the technologies we're hearing about today, like the production of biomethane, precision farming, much more productive. Perhaps in the old days it would have been called genetic modification. So just what role might that play? I guess Kit's a good person to maybe start that one off.
Yeah, I'm going to offer it to Kit and then probably V.
Yeah, a lot of people get antsy about asking about sort of gene editing, GMO. I don't really mind. I'll hang myself. As far as I'm concerned, why do we turn off science at any given point? Okay, we've developed science over the last thousands of years. We've developed continually, got better and better. Gene editing, certainly to me, is just the next tool in speeding up breeding. If I can breed a trait into a crop in 15 years, but with GE I can breed it in 3 or 4, that's just a no-brainer. I'm a bit more nuanced when it comes to sort of, and I'll forget my terminology, but gene, where you bring in genes from alternative species, size-genic rather than, anyway. Yeah, that gets a bit dodgy with me because you couldn't do it through traditional means. But if what I'm achieving, I could achieve through traditional means just in less time, go ahead and do it. And it's really critical and we should be doing it.
I'm for gene editing. GM, we are all not together as a society, not ready in the UK. And it's the right thing until we understand it fully. GE, I think if you take potatoes, for example, conventional breeding takes about a decade minimum to bring a new variety and another 4 years to propagate seed to a commercial volume. If we can use marker-assisted breeding, which the breeders are already using and have been using for a long time, but take it to the next level with GE to say you can knock off certain things that could be beneficial in the absence of chemicals, if it can make crops last longer, grow better returns, we'll be foolish to say no. And I'm glad that the UK has taken the stance that it's taken ahead of EU to fly the flag of GE in a controlled manner.
Well, thanks for that. We did have a discussion about how long it would take before gene editing came up, and 17 minutes from the start of the discussion is not too bad, actually. I think we should have all had a wager on what that would be. Okay, next question, please. Sir, gentleman over here, Catherine.
My name's Peter Rogers. I trained as an agricultural engineer, but I'm here today mainly out of interest. What I might call above ground crops, we have a lot about reducing energy inputs with min-till, controlled traffic farming, etc., and improving thus soil quality. But I see or read very little about root crops, and particularly potatoes, where you've got serious soil disturbance. And I just wonder what comments you've got on the future of that. Or we've seen slides today of waterlogged fields and heavy machinery stuck.
Yeah, Kit, maybe you can take that.
I can take it, but I'll pass it on to V very quickly. I mean, there's lots of work. Lots of people are scratching their head about how do we do less soil disturbance when growing root crops. And can we grow root crops on the flat, as we'd say? So rather than turning a field smashing up a soil, turning it into lots of ridges, where we've taken all the structure out of the soil and we've essentially made it very easy to wash away, and then we put potatoes in it. Can we create a system where we can grow potatoes on flat land without having to do that process? Lots of people it's causing a headache for, probably V, one of them. So
I think you're absolutely right. And it's not easy, therefore it's not being practiced or tried to be practicing more. But having said that, again, the positive side of trying to work towards net zero and trying to see what other way of growing crops could be better. I think if I just use Branston as an example, we have a net zero project, and the project is, yes, as it says in the tin, it's about reducing the carbon footprint, but most importantly, it's about different practices that we haven't even tried before to see could we adapt those in growing crops. And why it hasn't been done, why you're not seeing much, is going back to the risk and where does the risk to value proposition sit. Because now the government can fund us towards understanding carbon emissions and reducing carbon emissions, we can now use that funding to de-risk and look at why do we need to do this? Why do we need to go and disturb the soil everywhere? Why do we need to form the ridge? Why we destoning? Why can't we do certain different aspects of cultivation or method of growing? And that's what we are trialing. And it's a 3-year project. We are working on it. Hopefully you will see more of it as we shout about it. But that's the primary reason. It's that.
I just wanted to offer Mercedes an opportunity to say something there as well about that, and then I'm going to ask Chris. Have you got anything you wanted to add to what V was saying?
No, I think I agree with V completely in terms of, the run towards net zero and all the work that is happening around potatoes. It's just whether or not you get growers to try or to risk it or to engage and adopt these technologies. Yeah.
Chris?
Just about we actually did some experiments under an Innovate UK project where we basically created a biologically enhanced digestate. So we turned it back to aerobic. So we take, before it goes back on the land, get oxygen through it. So it's now got the aerobic bacteria. You introduce a culture, you get this bacterial tea, and then we seed drilled through a cover crop. And so basically we had a piece of equipment made where we drilled up, planted the seed under the cover crop, lifted it, and the results are absolutely flabbergasting, absolutely amazing. Never had a chance to go back to it. I'd love to know why can't you do it with potatoes?
I just had one thing, because I think it's all right saying, look, we want to do minimum till and we don't want to rotate the soil, but we also need to kind of be aware, and I'll use this one example, the wire worm example that Mercedes used. It's a teeny worm, but it gets into the potatoes too little too late when you find it. But it wasn't a problem in the UK 3 years ago. And all of a sudden, it's becoming a big problem to an extent the growers are stopping to grow potatoes because of the extent of what it can do. Is it because we are not turning the soil enough so that the bird of prey are not getting those worms that they were initially were possible? And is it the globe? So we got to be aware of the ecology that we have created, and a slight change, intentionally or unintentionally, will affect that ecology. And until that balance is struck, we are going to have these problems and have new problems that we haven't even counted before.
So yeah, I mean, this is all really exciting, and the science is exciting and interesting to do. The innovation is exciting and interesting to do. And I want to pick up on something that Alistair mentioned in his talk, and then many of you have kind of addressed also a little bit in your talk. But we need to attract a younger generation into farming and agriculture. We've got a huge challenge to feed the world. We're going up to 9 billion people on the planet. We've got all this food that's being wasted and lost in the food system. We've got, all the impact of climate change, the climate change that we're going to experience regardless of how we transition to lower emissions. So lots of challenges there that stimulate young people, that excite young people around sustainability, circular economy, doing something practical to tackle climate change. And you alluded to this a little bit in your talk, Alistair, and I'd like you to just focus a little bit on what we need to do around the skills and training agenda, around the attracting young people into agriculture agenda.
Yeah, I think it's almost before the skills part. It's trying to make the thing attractive, and I think at the moment, if you when you're 10, 11 or whatever, if you want to be an engineer, you obviously want to design Ferraris and McLaren cars because that's sexy and it's great and it looks interesting. But something we found quite recently, obviously Basildon, we're located in Essex. We're not very far from the Ford activity at Dunton. We've attracted quite a few car engineers over to our business recently, partly because of restructuring activities that Ford have been doing. But what they've come in and got excited about is the range of activities they can work on in the agricultural field is far more interesting, exciting, entertaining the autonomy part, the GPS systems, that, as Kit mentioned, on a car, anything within 10 metres is close enough. It doesn't really matter. When you're down to 2 centimetres, the challenges become more exciting. The vision technology, all the things that are there. Somehow, I think we've got to get that into younger people earlier on. Not wait until they're sort of 20 and finish their degree or halfway through the degree that realise, oh, it's not the right thing to be doing. So I think it's trying to make the technology side of agriculture more visual to people earlier on in their lives.
And I think, Kit, you're an academic. You claim you're not a very good academic, but you are in an academic institution. Yeah, let's have your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. I've spent the last 7 years of my life taking every opportunity to wave my arms at people. I've done it on telly plenty of times. I've been on the Gadget Show, the One Show, the Country File. I've any opportunity to try and tell an audience at home, or New Scientist Live in Excel Centre a couple of months ago, any opportunity to tell young people that, look, if you're interested in a better, greener, kinder future, and you actually, rather than just want to, I'm going to sound like a grumpy old fart now, but rather than just whinge about that, if you want to make the difference, ag is a hell of a place to come and make the difference.
Yeah.
I've been trying to make that case for 7 years. I'm at a university where our intake on our agricultural engineering course, big plug, is pretty stationary. We'd love to have double the numbers we do, frankly, but no matter what we try, it's really hard to get people to engage because they want to go and design a Ferrari or a jet engine, I don't really have the answer. I've tried my best, is my answer. But it's a real need. We need people that I don't think I ever speak to anybody and tell them about the challenges we face, and they don't go, oh, that's really interesting. But, you've got to just have a lot of those conversations.
Yeah, so V, I can see you're bubbling to say something.
Put some positivity to this. Thanks to all the good work that you've been doing and others have been doing, flying the flag of agriculture and technology, and how the engineers can come and contribute in the agricultural industry. I am seeing the benefit of it. We are starting to see the benefit of it as a beehive, because the biggest strength we have is attracting skills outside agriculture into a tech company, and that's why we created this ag tech company out of a normal potato company. If I were to try to find Mercedes to come and work for Branston, no chance of getting her to answer the call. Purely because why would anybody wants to go and work in a potato shed? And you won't, that's natural. If you are coding, and if you're a scientist of machine learning and artificial intelligence, you want to go and do all the bright and good things. You want to code for Google. Why do you want to code for food? But there's the transitions happening. I am seeing a lot of young people and young generation people who are passionate, and I use the word passionate, to come and code for food, code for good. And that is really encouraging. And that's because a lot of universities like Harper, Lincoln universities are flying the flag on what is art of possible, and then they learn that and they want to make it happen. To make it happen, they need to join a commercial entity to see the benefit of it.
Yeah, okay.
And therefore, I'm starting to see, might be a green shoot, might be I'm too optimistic, but it is starting to happen.
I think add to that is I think it's easier at that slightly older age, in the sense that there's an awful lot of grads who that bit more maturity, that bit more seeing of the world, reading of things, are then going, I want to do a master's or a PhD in this sort of subject, or, look for a company doing this sort of thing. Whereas it's quite hard to engage with that 16-year-old who's making their university decision at that point,
Yeah, I'd like to hear what Mercedes got to say. You wouldn't have worked for potatoes.
Well,
beehive sounds nice.
I think also for young people who are maybe not interested in the application on the core science, I think it would be really encouraging to them to know that you can work on this core science for agriculture. Because I think as well, if not everybody wants to work for Google, or not everybody wants to code for Google, some people just want to create something and just be the owners of what they are creating in that sense, right? So find a problem and solve that problem. And I think it's maybe agriculture right now is doing a better job of saying, we have all of these different problems in which agriculture can help, right?
Yeah.
If you had asked me, I've been 2 years with Beehive before I was at the University of Nottingham. So if you had asked me 3 years ago, do you think you can apply instant segmentation in agriculture? I would have said, no, where? I don't even know how that pipeline works. So it's about showcasing the actual problems that agriculture still has, and then letting people who are curious about the science realize that core science can be applied, can be extended into that space.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, how do we get younger people to get interested in playing around with slurry and cow poo?
Well, someone might notice that I'm not wearing green today. I'm now wearing blue. Blue is the colour of cold, and Benneman's now moving into that liquid methane part of that journey. So 6 months ago, we were about 35 people. We're now over 70. We've taken on probably about 10 engineers who want to get their hands on really sexy, high-tech equipment. And then there's all the control side of things. So we've got, we're bringing a completely new, we're bringing sort of rocket fuel technology into the consumer market. Okay, so for the first time, you're going to have a tractor running on rocket fuel, the same fuel as Elon Musk used. There's going to be a supply chain behind it. Those things have to be fixed. There's new engines that will be coming along. I see faces in the audience. We're unlocking a completely new energy supply that's locally distributed everywhere.
What is there not to like?
What is there not to like?
Right, we've got a bit of time for a few more questions or points. Justin.
Thanks very much. Justin Laney from John Lewis Partnership, and thanks for fascinating presentations. My question is, if we assume, and like to think this would be the case, that these technologies that we've talked about reach kind of widespread adoption, where does it evolve from there in the next, say, 10 to 15 years?
Great question. Future technology event. Let's hear. Let's start. Where should we start? Let's start with Kit.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to take it backwards rather than forwards for a starting point. I used to always get asked, when's this a commercial reality then? It's all great. You wave your arms at events. You've got a tractor that wiggles its way around a field and you've claimed that's brilliant. When's it commercial? When's it on farm? And I used to say it will be commercial by the year 2025. I used to say, and how I'd say that was I'd be unsurprised to see an autonomous system in a field by 2025. But the thing was, I was wrong. And everyone told me I was wrong because I was too optimistic. And really, I was wrong because I wasn't optimistic enough. I'm now already unsurprised to go around the UK landscape and see the occasional autonomous system working in a field. It is out there, it's in the fields, it's in polytunnels. We haven't touched on sort of fruit picking and all those things today where there's a huge labour challenge. But there are robots going in polytunnels, picking crop today. So the future is now, is my point. And by that future being now, what I hope it does is just bring fresh people, fresh ideas into agriculture, opens up rooms like this to talk about agriculture, which, dare I say it, there hasn't probably been many talks about agriculture in this building, I
let you talk here once.
Yeah.
I invited you.
So it's that, So it's just that thing of like trying to be loud about these technologies and get it out.
That's great. And V, I could see you were trying to get out your seat there to answer that one.
I hope I can articulate this better as I imagine always. I think life goes in circles in terms of the evolution is that way. But every time we circle around and we lap, we are far better than the previous time we lapped. And in that aspect, what I really think in the next 10, 15 years is I really like the dream of what the mechanization's far more automated, but we're still using smaller machines, swamp of those. We're not disturbing the soil and not damaging the planet, but creating more from it using the technology is where I would love to see it and hope it happens sooner than 15 years is where I am.
Yep, Mercedes?
It would be similar to V, but also with whatever technology they decide to use, Bangor is in control or knowing what it is that they're going to get from their harvest, what it is that they're planting, the effect on Earth that their planting is going to have. So using technology, whatever version of that technology, to empower them to understand their effect in the planet and what they're getting out of it as well, all of that.
Yeah, and Alistair, what's your vision of what's the future look like in?
I think the future from a machinery manufacturer like mine is we're seeing a lot more cross fertilization of technology from other industries. Sort of 10 years ago, who'd have thought AI would be in the ag business, and now it's something that we're working on. So I think it's getting that broad spectrum that we're now looking across wider industries and saying, actually, we can cherry pick a bit from there, we can cherry pick a piece from there, and we can bring it into the ag industry.
Yeah, and I mean that's a big sort of area that we advocate for here at the Institution of Mechanical Engineers is transferring technology from one sector to the other, not reinventing the wheel. And Chris, you've been a great example of that. Bringing that space technology, rocket fuel technology, physics into farming. Last word from you, please.
Energies. Bennamann is an energy company, so just imagine 21,000 farms in the UK. Each one has got its own ton of methane sat there out the back. It's got its 100 kilowatt generator, which is connected three-phase to the grid. Suddenly you have a completely distributed network of energy that you can switch on like that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the ability to sell energy into the future, because you can only do it at the moment with diesel. It's the only way you can do it. Because otherwise, how are you going to turn the lights on at 6 o'clock at night on a November when it's no wind, right, and there's no sun? How are you going to actually truly have a sustainable economy? And we've just touched on farms. We're actually working with Southwest Water. We're putting one of our upgraders onto a site next year. So human waste becomes the next target. Then it's pigs, chickens. Okay. Waste becomes a valuable commodity. So it's no longer waste. That would be my...
Perfect circular economy.
Yeah.
Yep.